begins in darkness. The genesis of an idea, a composer's music, a lyricist's words, a director's vision. Weeks ago, the Patricia Corbett Theater was completely empty. Today, it is covered with music, scenery, and special effects. The opera department of the College-Conservatory of Music presents the world premiere of Harold Blumenfeld's Seasons in Hell. The opera celebrates the life and art of the electrifying poet Arthur Rimbaud, revealing both musically and dramatically Rimbaud's dual lives as a poet-prodigy and subsequent trader in coffee and arms in Ethiopia. Composer Blumenfeld, along with director Malcolm Fraser and conductor Gerhard Samuel, has fashioned Seasons in Hell into a unique musical journey involving erotic and exotic scenes and episodes of violence and debauch, delirium and enchantment. From the earliest planning and rehearsals to the opening night, we will take you behind the scenes of this very poetic and high-tech opera, showing you what it takes to create Seasons in Hell. What you see on the stage or in front of a camera is the result of many hours of work behind the scenes. Hello, I'm Sean Moss. Welcome to a special production by the Electronic Media Division of the College-Conservatory of Music. Today we take a look behind the scenes at the making of the world premiere opera Seasons in Hell. The opera traces the dual lives of French literature's greatest prodigy, poet Arthur Rimbaud. For most opera goers, the final product is all that they see. But before anyone can begin planning and work, it must all start with an idea. We begin with the story of Seasons in Hell. The opera is based on the life, poetry, and correspondence of Arthur Rimbaud. Act 1 opens in the Hospital of the Conception. Rimbaud, at age 37, has just died, several months after the amputation of his right leg infected through the rigors of his life in Africa. The older Rimbaud rises from his deathbed to recall the golden years of his youth. At the age of 14, he astounds his professors and angers his fellow students by winning all of the awards at the Concours Academy. At 16, on the invitation of already established poet Paul Verlaine, Rimbaud comes to Paris. It is here that Rimbaud embarks on his self-proclaimed mission, the reinvention of French letters, language, and sensibility. Harold Blumenfeld is the first composer to devote extensive attention to the poetry of Arthur Rimbaud. Over the past decade, Mr. Blumenfeld has been immersed in Rimbaud poetry and myth.
I was in my backyard and I had my complete Rimbaud out. I had never really read it before. And as I read and read, the hair stood on my hair stood on end. The language is so eruptive and sublime and violent and totally avant-garde, and you know he takes French syntax and turns it inside out, you know. It's absolutely magnificent language, and it was all composed by a teenager.
Harold then presented the idea to his friend Charles Condike. Together, they composed the first draft of the opera.
I got to the point where I said, you know, Charlie, I want to write a serious piece of musical drama. And I want it to focus around Rimbaud, the revolutionary teenage poet.
At one point, the first libretto that turned up was not strong. And one night, Harold and I sat up all night rewriting it, and we sent it back to Charles Condike in its rewritten form. And Charles Condike got so annoyed about that he then really started work and came up with this very powerful libretto.
But Harold then brought the piece to the attention of longtime friend, internationally known conductor Gerhard Samuel, who presides over CCM's Philharmonia Orchestra.
When he first started talking about the Rimbaud thing, I got extremely interested in that. And knowing his music and knowing some of his other operas, I knew that he would be the perfect person to be writing that kind of a piece.
The story continues with Rimbaud's arrival in Paris at the age of 16. He begins his relationship with Paul Verlaine, who is 10 years older than Rimbaud. Act 1 ends in an orgy, the production's biggest challenge.
I just wanted to find a metaphor for, well, it seemed to be a very satisfactory metaphor for the sort of relationship these guys had. I didn't want something that was embarrassing in terms of two guys rolling around kissing each other on stage, which was sort of the implication in the text, you know.
Act 2 continues the forward story of young Rimbaud, carrying us from the horrors of the Paris Commune to his violent breakup with Verlaine. The forward action is intertwined throughout the act with the life of older Rimbaud depicted in reverse chronology. Seasons in Hell is challenging in both story and visual representation, but the third challenge comes to the music. The script calls for the orchestra to be interspersed throughout the stage. Conductor Gerhard Samuel had to be seen by all of the members of the Philharmonia. The use of a video camera and monitors allowed the conductor to be seen by the percussionists throughout the set.
With the monitors, we really had no problems.
No problem.
I expected we would have had more problems, but they could see what I was doing, they were used to what I was doing, and we made sure the camera was straight in front of me.
Seasons in Hell makes its premiere at the College-Conservatory of Music. There are several reasons for this decision.
Composers actually like to have a college premiere.
Well, I think a college set is pretty privileged. I don't think there are any pressures, really, because, I mean, you do it, and nobody's going to be ruined by it in terms of if people stay away in droves.
According to stage director Malcolm Fraser, it also affords the students the opportunity to take the art of modern opera forward into the new century.
So I think that's a very positive, and as an educational experience, just about taking this art forward somewhere, you know, wherever it is. I mean, it needs to move on or it's going to just disappear.
The success of Seasons in Hell is dependent upon the collaboration of many people. Harold Blumenfeld feels CCM has the best. As with all productions, the show comes down to the actors, trained people who step outside themselves to bring life to the characters on the written page. Today, we have Michael Cavalluna and Timothy Swaim in the studio. They are going to perform the scene from the opera where younger Rimbaud and Paul Verlaine end their 3-year relationship.
It began with disgust and ends, since one cannot seize eternity in a riot of perfumes. It began crudely and ends with angels of fire and ice.
And what do you mean?
I've seen enough. Visions stumble over each other everywhere. I've had enough clamor of cities in the evening, in sunlight and forever. I know enough life's haltings, oh clamor and visions.
What will you do?
Depart for new emotions, new sounds. When I came home this morning, I saw you in the window, waving a herring. If you only knew how fucking silly you looked.
Then go see what happens to you when you do. Wretch, look at yourself. Only your pride is alive, dancing in your eyes.
What is that for?
This Ribovita cost a lot, and it's for all of us. For me, for you, for everyone. Would you like me to kiss you as I die?
You're a slave. Threatened with divorce, you tremble, filled with pathetic fear. The way of the cross, tigerish things, a life at last free. where all lies.
Lies you created, your unrecorded voyage of discovery.
Which took me to the edge of the world. Happiness was my fatality, my remorse, my worm. Terror came, and the train for Paris leaves at 4:10. I will be on it with no more desires, and tomorrow I will once again seat beauty on my knee.
Thank you, Michael and Tim. We'll talk with you in a few moments. But first, Eileen Cook followed performer Mary Elizabeth Curez through the stages of preparing for her role in the opera.
Its name is Seasons in Hell, but for Mary Elizabeth Curez, it is a chance to perfect the art of opera. This native of Wisconsin played the part of the voice, which is the muse of the infamous poet Arthur Rimbaud. The voice is one of the central roles in the opera. Mary is on the stage for most of the performance singing, whether you see her or not. Preparing for this role did not just involve rehearsals. Mary Elizabeth graduated from a small college in Wisconsin. Then by encouragement from her voice teacher came here to CCM, where she earned a master's in voice. At CCM, Mary studies with Peter Polyakin, who is an opera coach. Polyakin coached Mary Elizabeth and several other performers for their roles in Seasons in Hell. The months of work and preparation are over, and now the moment they've all been waiting for, opening night. For Mary Elizabeth, the hours ahead are crucial. Makeup is the first stop. She is carefully transformed into the voice. With her hair being so dark, she even had to undergo a can of spray paint. Then, the placement of the wig, an instant blonde. In most opera productions, the singers are not mic'd, but for this role she wears a Madonna mic, so her voice may be heard above all the other performers. The rest of the time before the performance is spent warming her voice and stretching. Then, with good luck from her fellow performers, she takes her spot on center stage. Mary Elizabeth is now studying to receive her doctorate. When she finishes, she hopes to have a bit of both worlds, teaching and performing the art that she says allows her to suspend reality for a little while.
Like Mary Elizabeth, Michael Cavalluna and Timothy Swaim are students in the opera department of CCM. Michael, what is the hardest part of this role for you as Rimbaud?
I would say like creating a really powerful image of a man who's capable of doing anything. That was the greatest poet of all times at such a young age. To be able to transform that in myself, I mean, to come up with some way of an acting term in which you can create like an endless possibility of creativity. I mean, he was able to grasp concepts and put them down on paper, which no one could do before. He broke all the molds of what poetry was, and so I think the hardest thing would be giving the audience the sense of this man who was capable of incredible creativity.
Tim, what were some of the pressures that you had working on a world premiere production?
Well, you felt when it's done again, they will certainly look at what we've done. And the music is so difficult that you want to do justice to what's been written on the page, and then also do justice to the stage work. And it's difficult for me in a piece like this.
Sometimes we hear of the stage actors who just deliver lines, that they do a lot of research for their roles. How much research did you do into your characters, Michael?
I did some. I read a lot of his poetry. I read mostly the English translations because I'm not completely fluent in French. And I also read some of Enid Starkey had written a book on a biography of the life of Arthur Rimbaud, which is considered to be the masterpiece on his life. So I read part of that. But I think that there's also a point at which you have to block some of that out, because if you take that on stage with you, it'll read as if you're in your head, and then you're not creating it organically.
Tim, did you research into Verlaine?
I did. I read a lot of his poetry. He is not as clearly defined as a character in Seasons in Hell as Rimbaud. Of course, it's not about him, but so it was important to figure out what he was about and that sort of thing. But I'm like Michael. At a point, it has to come down to you need to know about their backgrounds, but you need to feel more what they were feeling, I think, than what actually happened. Because sometimes in operas like this, it's not exactly realistic anyway, with the historical happening.
You are both students here at CCM, and you're working on your master's, and Tim, I think you're working on your doctorate.
Right.
What are your plans for the future after you graduate?
I've got an audition for Houston Grand Opera in 3 weeks, and if that doesn't work out, my long-term goal is to be an opera performer with a major company. But right now I'm shooting for an apprenticeship, and one would be great if I could work out at Houston. But if that doesn't work out, I've also got an audition coming up for New York. I don't know what's going to turn out of that. And then Sarasota Opera was also a possibility.
And you want to do?
I have a couple more years in the doctoral program. I'm going to start the audition circuit too. I'd like to be a performer.
So are you guys scheduled to do any other performances here at CCM?
We've both got a role in Bartered Bride. I'm playing Krushina, it's Marie's father, and he's...
I'm Vashik, a little stuttering tenor. It's a complete departure from Verlaine.
Great. Well, thank you guys for your time today. I know that you're both busy with your studies and your performances, so we appreciate you coming by.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Good
very
luck
much.
in your futures.
Thank you.